Greetings everyone, and welcome to Anime Night in the Dojo. Today's featured show, My Hero Academia, the final season.
Yep, My Hero Academia, final season, episode 11. Welcome back to the dojo. I'm Ryu. That's Age. I have no idea how I'm awake right now, but we're doing this.
You're not.
I'm not awake. If I seem off, I'm probably not awake right now, but somehow I'm doing this anyway. So that's where we're at. This is the last episode of My Hero Academia for now, until we get the super final epilogue episode that's going to come out in May, something like that. That will adapt the final thing the author did in chapters 432 or 6 or whatever the last one that the author wrote. So if you guys are looking for that, that's coming out in May-ish. So I assume that'll also get a dub. I can't imagine it won't. That'd be kind of weird if it didn't. But they probably already handled the voice recording for that. But either way. Yeah. As for this, I believe we're going to be hitting the time skip for this one, which is 8 years or something, and we'll see them in their 20s, and we'll answer several more epilogue questions, and that'll be it. So
yeah, I didn't see how long the epilogue was, just that the epilogue, but the time skip was just that there was going to be, I just knew there was going to be a time skip where it skips to after they've already graduated and what they're all doing in their pro hero work, or if they even continued pro hero work and so on.
Right. So that being said, we're just going to go ahead and push some buttons and get going here. So, yeah, somehow I'm going to do this. So people on Patreon will see you on the other side of the edit for the time reaction, and people on YouTube will see you on the other side for the discussion and review. And if you're looking for the opposite video of what you're watching, it's in the place where it needs to be, and you can click buttons and find it. So here goes some.
Buttons. I love buttons.
Well, there you guys have it. The end of the series for the moment. We got all those little vignette cards at the end that we were talking about at the end of the reaction there and stuff like that. But the author does expand on that in the final manga chapters, 435, 36, something like that. Hopefully by the time that comes out, I'll have time to have read it. But I'm busy in my fugue non-awake state, dealing with keeping my house from flooding and preparing a lawsuit against our neighbor, because yeah, that's just where we're at for, stuff. They're not draining their yard. I could show you guys some pictures. They look like they have a lap pool in their front and side yards, and they don't worry about it. And, it's just, coming downhill into our house, and they don't see that as a problem. Well, yeah, so we're going to be seeking legal counsel and whatnot. So there's a little glimpse into what I have to deal with off cam. But in on cam time, when we can do this, I still can do this. So I need to do it to step away from the madness for a little bit. I got a couple hours of rainless stuff, so we're here doing this. And then I'm going to go back to monitoring drainage. So, but as for this, we talked about it at the end of the reaction as well. And again, we'll reiterate it a little bit here is, this did everything that you'd want it to do. It checked all the boxes. It's been a while since I've seen that classic, 80s, where are they now, kind of end of a movie, what happened to this character and that character? This character went on to do that kind of thing. So it's kind of neat to see that. That's kind of a throwback. I appreciated that for what it was. I know a lot of people might not like that kind of thing, but it is, you know what I mean? And we're going to get that expanded upon in the final epilogue episode that is going to come out here in a couple months. But this right here, I mean, this was, they did a lot of callbacks to certain characters and stuff like that. This was the grandma, in case anybody missed it. This was the grandma that was in the Shigaraki flashback when she was, a little bit younger, 20 years ago, whatever that was. That decided to not help Shigaraki as a kid, even though she saw something was wrong. If it wasn't obvious when she made the statement, I wonder whatever happened to that kid. It's did you really not put it together? But to be fair, yeah. By the time Shigaraki was out and in the public eye, he looked way different. So we talked about aging and whatnot. Yeah. So it'd be really hard to put that together unless somebody knew the situation and knew that, what happened with her and whatnot. And be oh yeah, that kid you ignored, that was Tomura Shigaraki. And then, oh boy, that'd be a real bummer for her.
Yeah, no, it was just some kid she ran into one time, which, like she said, she came to regret not helping him, but it was just some kid she ran into sometime at one time, and then friggin' like over a decade later, Shigaraki shows up. He's way older and he looks completely different because he has all his like scarring from his like scratching and stuff like that. His hair color is completely different.
Right.
So like
there's no way anybody could have probably put that together. You know what I mean? Just like a singular event, and then like a decade and a half later, who's gonna put that together? It's like, oh, that's totally that kid that I ignored. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So you might think about it like she did, like I wonder whatever happened to that kid, kind of thing. But yeah, it's just one of those things where we talked about how like one event can profoundly change somebody's life in any direction, and that's what this series was. One of the major aspects of this series was that just that ideal. You know what I mean? Like just to...
Yeah, I mean we only got flashback like 25 times to
you too can be a hero.
You too can be a hero as being like Deku's one big event,
right?
That changed his life.
Exactly. And sometimes all it takes is somebody actually, caring enough to just, reach out to a stranger and say, hey, you good? You know what I mean? Do you need help with something? Kind of deal. And
yeah, like that was one of the things Shigaraki even like said when he was like going in retrospect and thinking back on like his past traumas and stuff like that, is when he actually thought of a bunch of different events, including the event with her. He was like, if anyone had actually like reached out and tried to help me at that point, I probably would have turned out a lot better. But the only one who reached out to him was All For One.
Yeah, which, well, are you kidding me, Crunchyroll? Are you serious right now? But yeah, so it's just those profound like singular events, stuff like that can drastically alter the course of anybody's life in a positive or negative sense. But this series focuses on the positive, obviously, because we're trying to do hero culture and all that kind of thing. So just the effect that Deku and the rest of them had on just society in general, willing to it wasn't just her, everybody else there was looking to help the kid and stuff like that once he came out of the alleyway there, that kind of thing.
Yeah, she was the only one who actually like stepped up to actually help him. But like if you compare the two scenes, like in the Shigaraki scene, everyone's just trying to blow past him and like ignore that he even exists and just try to basically play ignorant. But in this scene here in the future, like people are actively concerned with him and keeping an eye on him and stuff like that. It's just only the old lady who actually is willing to step up and do something about it.
Right. Which, even if she wasn't there, as we saw across the street, Deku and Ochako were there and probably would have done something. But still, it was the whole purpose of this scene was that the heroes don't have to be the ones that step up. That was circling back around to what Hawks was saying as the other part of the sequence was, we need to highlight people in the community that just do something like that. You know what I mean? As we can see, this guy was recording the whole damn thing, because not unlike our current society, most people are more willing to pull out their cameras, or their phones in this case, and start recording as opposed to actually doing something. If there's a car crash, there is 100 people recording and maybe one person calling 911. You know what I mean? That's where we're at. Or, if it's really bad, like, running over there and like breaking glass and trying to pull somebody out or something, like, you know what I mean? Actually doing something that would help the situation, as opposed to trying to go viral and get views and follows and shit. You know what I mean? So
yeah, the whole thing with Hawks was just basically trying to restructure the hero society so that it's less focused on just these quote unquote superheroes and more just focused around the idea of just everyone being heroes in general.
Yep. Just being reasonably decent human beings. That's all it is. You know what I mean? And I know that's a hard ask. Camp taught us that. It's very hard to be a reasonable, decent human being. It's the hard part. Absolutely. But the world would be a better place if everybody was just even fairly reasonable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really like the whole situation.
You don't have to be the patron saint of whatever, patience, whatever. Just be reasonable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, really, like the whole situation here is just everything gets significantly better. Everyone is just slightly better.
Yeah. Like I said, you don't have to be a saint. You don't have to dedicate all your time. But just something as simple as, like, you know, you see somebody struggling or whatever, like in the case of this kid on the street, and just like, hey man, are you good? Like, want to go grab like a water or something, coffee? You just, you know, just something. That's all it could take. You know what I mean? To prevent another Shigaraki. You know what I mean? Or whatever, what have you. You know what I mean? You never know what that person could go on to do, just based on one singular life-turning event. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, that was, again, to make the Joker quote, all it takes is just one bad day.
Yep. And we saw here at the at least in the school section, I'm not entirely sure exactly where it was, but I mentioned it during the actual episode itself, like when they were flashing to Koda talking to Deku, like when he became a teacher. The kid that the granny saved walked past him from behind, so he became a UA student. You know,
yeah, it was before this.
Yeah,
this is like when Deku's like recounting stuff.
but yeah.
Which is all like first kicked off by Koda coming to talk to him.
Yeah, it was like you know, it's the couple like the panel, the things that you miss, but like I can just let this play. This isn't a thing. I mean, just kind of whatever. But you can see like literally right here, right there, that guy right there. Boom.
Yeah,
that's totally him. Okay. that was definitely obvious. So, you know, one life-changing event, boom, you know, several years later, he's a UA student, as opposed to potentially starting another League of Villains.
Yeah.
So, it's always nice when it's just the little things. They didn't have to highlight the character at all. That's all they needed to do. You know what I mean? Because there would probably be a lot of people like, well, what happened to that kid? Like, well, you know what's the deal? Well, there's your answer. That's all you need. You know what I mean? You don't need an overly massive explanation. So there you have it. You know what I mean? So either way, stuff like that, that's the thing that this series has revolved around. And, you know, they've done it well for what it was. And the rest of the episode was just them kind of like wrapping everything else that was going on, that kind of thing. The graduation sequence, that was fine. Once again, there's probably a lot of people that were I was on that frame for a second there, but Bakugo smiling, actually, what the hell? If somebody captured that moment as opposed to what he's doing as a pro, apparently that's the Bakugo that everybody's looking for, not the, you know, Kachan that we're still getting, apparently.
Yeah, like shortly after going pro, he actually like immediately like gains a ton of ranking, and it's like number 9 or something like that off the charts. But then, you know, abrasive personality, he loses most of his popularity and drops down to like the low 100s.
Yep. So we can't be surprised by this. But you know, we go the entire series, and very rarely or at all did we see him in a positive, you know, sequence, and this was like the one time we got to see a smile out of Bakugo. Can you freaking believe that it actually happened? If that was on your bingo card, oh man, you know, sometime in like season 2, will Bakugo ever smile in this series? Well, it happened in the epilogue, so you can take that and you got something. But either way, you know, we got like a lot of the stuff that was going on with the characters, stuff like that. You know, it did everything that it needed to for just setting up the next generation and stuff. You know, we got those little like random callouts. I guess Tsukiyomi has his own cologne, because why wouldn't he? I mean, all the edgy guys have a cologne. I don't know. Is that just what we do?
Well, once again, we also saw like they didn't get rid of the popularity aspects, so like getting heroes to like endorse products and stuff is still a thing.
Yeah.
Like we saw freaking what's her name, Lightly or whatever, is still like an active pro with her own organization, and that's where Faye's working now.
Yeah.
And her whole shtick was basically just being the sellout hero.
Right. Yeah. So either way, also predominantly them taking these sponsorship deals were to bankroll what we saw at the end of the episode there, which was Deku getting his Iron Man suit, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew the suit was a thing that, like, yeah, he gets at some point or another. That it doesn't imitate, like, all of the quirks. It's mostly just, like, Black Whip and Float and, like, Super Strength. And it's nowhere near as strong, obviously, as when he actually had One for All, but it's still, like, more or less imitates his fighting style when he was an active hero and allows him to go do moderate hero work again.
Right. Which, as they were going on about, hopefully moderate hero work is all they need. And a lot of the counseling stuff that, Chaco and Tsuyu were doing leads into what they discussed before was the singularity theory where, we need to circle all the way back around since I'm going to try my best to wrap the series here in the next 10 minutes. A lot of people always talked about MHA and it's like, oh, well, everybody has a superpower. No, not superpowers. Superhuman. Those are two different things. We talked about this a little bit as the season went on. There are quirks. Some people just have horns coming out of the side of their heads, or they can stretch their eyeballs out, or, just very moderate things, like the guy who could make, like, tiny razor blades come out of his skin, that kind of thing. So, not superpowers, okay? So let's just drive that point home right now. We are going toward everybody having superpowers, however, with the singularity theory of, they're past that point, which all quirks that are coming out are superpowered. And that's the problem, which superpowered quirks could lead to just the problem of the quirk itself being too powerful for the body and destroying their user.
Yeah, that's the whole, like, thing to the quirk singularity, is just that every generation quirks get a little stronger. And we're approaching the point, like we already saw towards the end of the series here, a few characters actually hit the point of quirk singularity, where the quirks hit a point where, like, they are superpowered to the point where they can't be fully controlled by the human body anymore, or contained by the human body anymore. So you end up needing to have, like, rapid evolutions of the body, similar to, like, Shigaraki did. Or how some of the characters' quirks got, like, super powered to the point of, like, like Sadman, Death Parade, and stuff like that.
Right. So, either way, that's just...
freaking Dobby literally turning into a freaking nuclear blast.
Yeah. So, it's just one of those things where... if with the fact that the author has left this fairly open-ended as to whether they want to do a sequel series, that kind of thing, that they've obviously left that open-ended enough to where they could just pick it up if they wanted to. And I know that's something they have talked about, like, maybe, you know what I mean? They're in the maybe boat, but right now they're just kind of, like, basking in the glory of finishing the series. You know what I mean? And enjoying the anime release, and then, like, having that be wrapped up and probably taking some time off. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's basically what they've said so far, is just that they're done for now, and give them a while and they'll decide whether they feel like actually doing a sequel or not.
Yeah.
But they've deliberately left it open enough to continue on, because, like, once again, we set up the whole premise of all it takes is just one missed situation for another Shigaraki to show up.
Right. And we're already setting up Dai as a potential, like, new protagonist. Right.
In the future.
Yep. So the only thing that kind of concerns me is stuff like this is, like, I had this discussion about, like, say, Mass Effect, the game series, where how do you top the Reapers? You know what I mean? And what they did with Andromeda and stuff like that. And it's one of those things where how do you top, like, what was written here with, like, All for One and Shigaraki and all the stuff that went here? It's like, you have that expectation of the fan base as to, like, what how do you top it? And it's different than, like, say, what Naruto did between the original series and Shippuden. That was still the same thing. You know what I mean? That was still the same story. That was just a time skip. You know what I mean? Nothing really wrapped up at the end of Naruto. You know what I mean? The end of the Naruto original series was a cliffhanger. You know what I mean? That was just like, hold on, we're going to continue this later kind of situation. So in this case, this would be starting something new potentially in the same universe. And obviously they're doing something similar with, you know, vigilantes and stuff like that, but that's something completely different in, you know, in America instead. But it's just one of those things
Vigilantes is a prequel side series.
Yeah. So I think it's always difficult when you write something and you're expected to, like, continue in the same universe, like, with a different character. You know what I mean? Like, say if they made Dai, like, the main character of that series, and then, like, say kind of like what they're doing with, like, Boruto in a way. I don't know how that's turning out because I've not watched any of that show, and I honestly have zero interest in watching that show.
From everything I've heard, Boruto is a mess, especially because one of the things I was going to say, like, it's a serious balancing act trying to balance expectations and actual power scaling when you do a sequel series, because everyone is going to compare the two series.
Yep.
So you end up getting situations of, like, you have to either just continue the power scaling from where you left off, which doesn't usually make sense, or you have to reasonably find a way to reset back towards the beginning and the power scaling and get people to believably, like, be able to set their expectations aside.
Right. It's kind of like what happens to Kratos at the beginning of every God of War. Gets reset. You have to start over. But yeah, I think it's kind of like a slippery slope of just, like, you know, if you stick in the same universe with the same characters, like with what Boruto is doing, and again, I haven't seen it, but I've seen clips and obviously people talking about it. You know, I don't have the firsthand experience, but I think it's that slippery slope of, like, you know, you got used to a bunch of characters in this universe and you know they exist, and then you subconsciously have to remove yourself from caring about what they're doing because you're not going to get them. They're going to be tertiary characters at best. You know what I mean?
Yeah, probably one of the best examples of like, maintaining expectations without massively power creeping every single time when you do a sequel is JoJo's.
Right.
Like, there is power creep between the sequels, but it's nowhere near that ridiculous. And most of the time, like, when characters still exist, they actually have, like, written explanations and reasons why they're weaker.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing with, like, Jotaro being heavily nerfed in the later seasons because he spent, like, a decade not actually training his stand or doing any sort of combat anything, just living a normal life.
Right. So, but I don't know. It's just, if the author chooses to do it, it's their series. You know what I mean?
I will say, one of the things I was trying to get to with all this was, this series, if they do a sequel to it, will be kind of weird, because to an extent they reset because they're going back to a new set of students, presumably. Because once again, presumably Dai would be, like, the main character. But also, the author has already set up the premise for there being escalation of power scaling, because the quirk singularity is most likely going to be one of the main focuses if there is a sequel. That idea that every generation is stronger than the previous generation, just because of the way quirks evolve and adapt. So, whenever we get to the sequel and are dealing with a generation or two down the list, everyone is just going to inherently be more powerful, so the power scaling is going to go higher.
Right. So, either way, I think it'd be a very difficult thing to do, but it's up to the author to decide if they want to do that, or I'm sure if they wanted to do something completely different, you know what I mean, just a completely new series, it'd probably be fine. But There are a lot of times where authors, catch lightning in a bottle and then do something different, and it just doesn't turn out as well. And you know what I mean? Sometimes you just hit that jackpot on your first series or your second series, whatever it is, and then you just can't do it again. You know what I mean?
Sometimes you make shit for like 10 years without getting any real success, and then all of a sudden you blow up.
Yep. So,
like, that's more or less kind of what happened with the freaking Dragon Maid author. They did a bunch of like, their most of their stuff was just like freaking like porn and stuff like that initially, but they largely had no real significant following for the longest time until like a year or so before they started Dragon Maid. They got a bit of popularity and eyes on them. Then they started Dragon Maid and they just absolutely freaking exploded.
Right. So either way, whatever the author chooses to do, I'm sure it'll be fine. You know what I mean? If they just want to retire undefeated, absolutely fine. You know what I mean? Not saying that this is the greatest series of all time again, but it was generation defining for the last decade. You know what I mean? It was one of the new, people talk about like the big three, that kind of thing. If you talked about anime in the last 10 years, you're going to be talking about My Hero Academia. You know what I mean? As something that is just like a staple shonen that is just a solid show. You know what I mean? Did it have its problems?
Yeah.
Sure. Did it have too much batch cast for certain things? Sure. There were certain characters that absolutely could have been written out of the story without, they didn't need to exist. Like, this was something that I said I was going to talk about in the wrap up, so I'll talk about it right now. We talked about like some of the aging stuff and like how they aged up characters at the end of the reaction there for Patreon, but I'll say it again here when we're talking about this is like, Sato and Tailman, I forget his actual name. Those are prime examples of two characters that didn't need to exist for the class. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Throughout this entire series, they didn't really do anything. Yeah, Sato had his like whole like when they moved into the dorms thing, and he did the cooking thing and whatever. But a lot of those characters that were like tertiary like that didn't feel like they served like a purpose outside of what do they call it for like like in MMOs? They're a warm body to fill the raid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they were literally just trying to. The author was literally just trying to fill seats in the class.
Yeah,
because they wanted to make literally every member of the class a character.
Yeah, and then we had Class 1B as well, which some of those characters were more important to the story and did more than what several of the 1A characters did, like the bottom portion of the class.
That's what I was going to say. Like, that's probably one of my biggest gripes with the series as a whole. And what I think really could have and should have probably been done better was they went too heavily into the whole, like, adding other classes and trying to diversify that way, rather than just having a focus beyond, like, the one main cast. Like, the whole idea of, oh, we have the business class, we have the support class, we have the multiple hero classes. Just make it to where there's like maybe 2 classes in total. Because once again, UA is supposed to be an elite school, so there shouldn't really be that many students there.
Right.
In a given year. Like when you add all of the years together, probably a reasonable amount, but like a given year shouldn't probably be more than a couple classes.
Yep.
But a lot of the characters, like May or a bunch of the Class B characters, should have just been Class A, and like they could have had like another class or two be mentioned and occasionally like shown as background characters just to show that there are more classes. But they shouldn't have put any real focus on them. They should have just focused on the one class and just moved all of the major characters into the class and moved all of the irrelevant characters out of the class.
Right. So that was just, the one thing that this definitely suffered from was batch casting and stuff like that for what it was. And while it did, have, 150 episodes, whatever this was, there were a lot of characters that looked like they were going to do something. You know what I mean? Like, hell, even Ida was sidelined for 3.5 seasons, basically. Like, it had the whole Stain arc, and then he was just not existent until in season 5. Well, it wasn't like 3 seasons, but he was like irrelevant for like a season and a half. which is a long time, obviously.
He was a main character until the Stain arc, and then he got replaced for Shoto.
Yeah,
because like Shoto wasn't really that much of a character. Like he wasn't a character at all until the freaking the sports festival. Then he becomes like a minor character after his whole big thing with Deku.
Yep.
And then the Stain arc happens, and he just completely sidelines Ida.
Yep. Now, to be fair, and I will say this from just like a writing standpoint, is when you think about like if you're going to create a series, you probably know how it's going to start. You probably know where there's some big plot points and how it's going to end. As you're filling out the rest of that, you're writing something and then you deviate. You know what I mean? That happens a lot. So that's probably what the deal is with some of those other things is you're writing something, and then it's just like, I like what I did with Shoto. I want to expand upon this now. You know what I mean? And then it just kind of like went into the whole, this is something that you'd have to ask the author, obviously, but it's like, how early did they know that they were going to make the Todoroki family as relevant as they were? Was that a hard shift that they did at the end of the Stain arc? And then this really went into the Endeavor stuff, or was that like one of the big sticking points for the series that they wanted to do, that kind of thing? So
I'd assume Shoto got a lot of popularity out of the sports festival, and that kind of influenced how much of a focus the Todorokis were going to get.
Yeah, it could have been like, you know, he has like the backstory that they gave him from the sports fest, and then it's like, okay, this is either going to be highlighted or not. And because of, you know, just popularity, then it's like, okay, I'm going to write this, kind of like how May got as much focus as she got because of her popularity, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? And she was one of the better side characters that arguably should have gotten way more screen time than she actually did. Because when she was, you know, on screen, it was always important, relevant, and fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, one of the things I do kind of hope, if the author does do a sequel, is that because of the way things have shifted around in the in-universe, is once again they get rid of the whole like difference between like the support class and the hero class, and because once again the whole like premise to a lot of this end here is just that everyone's a hero.
Yep.
So like, because it's actually having active heroes like Ida's brother or Deku who operate pretty much entirely off of tech rather than their quirk. Because like in Deku's case, he's quirkless now. Actually being like a freaking catalyst for supports being actually like moved into hero course, and just them just kind of merging everything into hero course, because once again there's not supposed to be really any difference. It's just everyone's supposed to be heroes, whether you're a superhero or not.
Yep.
And tech being so prevalent now, like, because that's one of the things they were saying is like that now that peacetime has been occurring, tech is catching up to quirks and even potentially supplanting a bunch of them, because like that was the whole thing they were talking about with the a bunch of the support stuff just kind of completely overshadowing a lot of the heroes.
Right.
And then you have shit like Deku's new suit that once again still isn't as strong as One for All, but that's like an unfair comparison.
Yeah.
It still makes him very strong.
Right. So, I don't know. There's just like a lot of like, you know, as the series went on, it had a lot of, you know, people griping about this, that, or the other thing. And, you know, longer running series kind of have that, and it is what it is. On the whole, it was a solid show. And we got to remember that at the end of the day, this was supposed to be entertainment, and the show was entertaining from an objective standpoint. You know, did it have its ups and downs? Sure. It had very good moments. It had arguably one of the biggest moments in anime history with the United States of Smash. You know what I mean? I'm sure there are hours and hours and hours of compilations of people reacting to that initially and stuff like that. And I'd say it's on par with Goku going Super Saiyan for the first time. You know, a legendary moment in the history of fiction in this case. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there were some there were a number of really big iconic moments, but yeah, the United States of Smash is probably one of the biggest moments in forgetting the last decade or so of anime.
Yep. And I will say this, since we're kind of talking about moments, Kirishima had the second best moment in the entire show. Think about that for a second. Kirishima. This is not arguable for me. The moment with him protecting Fat Gum in that fight was arguably the most heroic moment outside of anything All Might did, or just when you talk about being a hero and the line delivery, at least from the dub side. I'm sure the rest of the, I'm sure the Japanese side was fine too, but the way that VA delivered that entire sequence about like the chivalrous hero and all that stuff about Kirishima's backstory and what he did there, that line delivery, especially for me, like that one choked me up. I was like, man, that was like perfect delivery, and arguably one of the best moments of this entire series was the Kirishima moment in the raid to save Eri, that whole thing. So to me, outside of the United States of Smash, if you're going for like tier list of moments in this series, for me, for like just hero stuff, it's the United States of Smash, and then Kirishima, and then whatever else. You know what I mean? There are some cool moments, like the Stain stuff. Stain's moment, that's probably number 3 for me. Like where he just like completely like freezes everybody. That was very, very powerful. A very powerful moment in the series, and very cool. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, in a show that had a lot of big time moments as well, those 3 things like stand above everything else for me. So those are my top 3.
Yeah, I'd say like the top 5 moments are probably, United States Smash, obviously, Kirishima, yes, pretty much the entire Stain fight, the Deku versus Todoroki on the freaking sports festival, and then when Shigaraki like first wakes up after his all the doctor's experiments on him and stuff like that, and he just absolutely like he completely catches the heroes off guard with just how powerful he is, and just destroys freaking the entire city and wipes out like half the heroes the moment he wakes up.
Yep. So either way, at the end of the day, like I said, on the whole, it was a solid, fun series, and one of the staples of anime of the last decade. And this this little wrap up thing that they did with like the little vignettes, that was fine. We're going to be getting the probably like an expansion on the vignettes and stuff like that in that final episode that we discussed. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. And it's obviously predominantly going to be a ship episode, because they alluded to some of the ships, like Jiro and Kaminari, that kind of thing. Like in the vignette, they like started like hero agencies next to each other and stuff like that. And we just talked about that last week with Spy Family, with relationship stuff and just talking to people. It's like, why didn't he just ask her out? What the hell? You know what I mean?
Yeah, they started neighboring agencies because he couldn't bring himself to start an agency by himself. He needed her around for support.
Yep. So I don't know. Just you know what I mean, you guys? Just leap. The worst thing anybody can do is tell you no. You know what I mean? So that's just one of those things, and they'll probably go more into the ship stuff. It was the Mineta thing was hilarious. That was great.
Cuts straight to Alistair giving freaking Vox his Joker moment.
Right, exactly. But either way, again, a solid series. Things could have been removed, certain characters and stuff like that, to just kind of like remove the batch castness, hyper focus in on things. I'm still not sure how I feel about like the Aoyama thing being like him being the spy for All For One, that kind of thing. It makes sense, and there was like the breadcrumbs when you kind of like look back at the series in hindsight and go, yeah, they were seeding that kind of makes sense, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, with the way quirks were even in their generation, there's no reason to think that All For One gave Aoyama that power, that his power could have just not vibed with his body just in general. That could have just been a thing. It's not like, oh, clearly All For One gave him that quirk and whatever. That's why it's not working with his body. It's like, well, there's a lot of people and stuff that we've seen in the series where their quirks didn't like their bodies. So,
we had that established over the course of the series that like some people just their bodies did not cooperate with their quirk. Like that, once again, that's the whole thing with Dobby.
Yeah.
Dobby's body is frost resistant and vulnerable to fire, but his quirk is fire.
Yeah.
And then freaking that's the whole part of the whole thing of like how All For One would indoctrinate people is he would take away their bad quirks. Or you'd have characters who had like not necessarily bad quirks, but quirks that inconvenience parts of their life, like Hagakure.
Right.
Like her invisibility quirk is still like such a strong quirk and stuff like that, but it completely like freaking rules her life in that she can't be visible even if she wants to.
Right. So anyway, the last thing I will say for this series is I think All For One is a criminally underrated antagonist. You know what I mean? I think All For One was one of the better utilized and more interesting villains just in a while. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people underrate the guy and this character, and he was especially with what we got here in the final season, like completely just bringing his entire character arc just into light and just us having all the pieces finally. What a fabulous character. You know what I mean? And I talk about this with like stuff with like wrestling and stuff like that, when you want characters like John Cena to be cheered because they're the good guy. But when you have a bad guy character, like pick your favorite bad guy character, or whatever it is right now, say like Drew McIntyre, you want that character to be booed. You want to cheer against it. The worst thing you can have for any character is indifference. And there are a lot of villains and bad guys and antagonists in series that you look at and go, okay, you know what I mean? And for All For One,
general, like that you just are indifferent towards, like, and that's one of the biggest failings you can have for them. Like,
no reaction is the worst reaction.
They actively bring down their series. Like Faraway Paladin, most of the characters in that are just totally like, why are we even interacting with this character?
They're flat. You know what I mean?
And we just recently watched Eminence in Shadow, and Sid a lot of the times is just totally uninteresting. Like, he's funny occasionally, but most of the time he's just grating, and you don't even really care for him being on the camera.
Yeah. So it's one of those things, like, he was a very well-written character. He didn't overstay his welcome, and when he had screen time, it was impactful and at points terrifying because you didn't know what he was going to do. That just over the course of the hundreds of years that he was alive and all the networks that he created and stuff like that just proves that, like, what somebody can do with time. You know what I mean? All the connections that he made all over the world, that kind of thing. And the way, just the line delivery, that, and I've heard the line delivery for the Japanese VA too, and it was great. You know what I mean? Like, just even that, like, one sequence where he was just like, when he flips around All Might's catchphrase on him, that kind of thing, incredibly powerful. That's exactly what you want for a villain. You know what I mean? They have to invoke that sense of, like, wanting the audience to dislike them. You know what I mean? Even if it's crossing a line. While they're telling a story, a genuinely bad and, like, evil person is gonna cross the lines. You know what I mean? You're one of your parents or friends or whoever just died from cancer in a car crash. They're going to bring it up and use that to twist the knife. You have to be willing to go there as a writer, because that's what makes a good antagonist. They're going to twist the knife. They're going to exploit your weaknesses. They're going to shit talk you into oblivion to get you to make mistakes so they can win. And that's what All For One did.
Yeah, freaking. That is just one of my bigger problems with a lot of the societal norms of late is like, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the DEI stuff in general, but in particular, just how much people have been trying to impose a lot of those like DEI and SJW beliefs and stuff, even on the villains and stuff. Like, I brought this up before, but in Star Rail, one of the bigger villains and probably one of the best characters in that at the moment is Sparkle. She's just this chaotic freaking Joker of a character. And at one point or another, she says not even a real like racial slur. She says an in-universe racial slur towards one of the other characters. And suddenly she got a massive backlash online of like, oh no, how could Hoyo possibly make a villain racist?
Yeah, imagine that.
When if you have any context of the scene, Sparkle isn't racist. She's just an asshole, and being an asshole to that particular character and knows that would get under his skin.
Right. And you see that a lot. A lot of people bring up the Teen Titans episode where there's that character that is very racist against Starfire, and every time he refers to her as a Troc, that is the term for like a derogatory term for a Tamaranian. That was one of the most powerful episodes in the history of Teen Titans and just animated just anything. You know what I mean? And it's just, that's how you have to write a character, because let's not pretend that there aren't people that do that kind of thing in real life. Where do you think the inspiration comes from? You know what I mean? So
yeah, just in general, like, people have gone way overboard in the opposite direction of trying to just not have any sort of character flaws for villains or otherwise. Like, another big example that I frequently bring up is, as much as I like the Persona series, the newer Personas, they've definitely been very much toning down a lot of the flaws of the characters. Like,
I mean, if you look from Persona 3 to 4 to 5, the downgrade in villain, it's there. You can see it. I mean, look at what some of the stuff that happens in Persona 3. There's like suicide and murder and just massive betrayal and craziness. And then 4 has a little bit of that because of what's going on. And then 5 kind of like steps it down, but they kind of like raise it a little bit more with like the political figure that is Shido and stuff like that. But, you know, Shido, for the most part, is just like kind of like a background character. You know what I mean? It's just like the shitty politician. That was like the easy route. Most politicians are shitty. So, you know,
he's just a politician who's a little bit of an asshole and kind of corrupt.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like, even if you just look at the main casts, like, freaking the bro character in P3, it's Junpei. Junpei has all sorts of problems, but most notably, he is very sexist. And he gets over that over the course of the series, and he makes character growth till eventually he's actually a fairly reasonable person, if not a bit obnoxious still. Freaking, then you go to P4 and you have Yosuke, who's homophobic. And once again, he gets over that to an extent, at least over the course of the series. Then you go to P5 and Ryuji's just loud.
And just a guy who got bullied out into an injury. I mean, not everybody is going to have that like character growth arc. You know what I mean? Like, you can obviously be like a reasonable person like Ryuji was, but still, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you could having a reasonable character or two in the whole cast is fine, but like every game, like, it's just more and more of the cast just gets kind of watered down like that. Like, the only character in P5 that I would really even consider remotely on the level of like P3 characters when it comes to like actual like depth and character development is Futaba.
Yeah. So anyway, all that stuff being said, great series, you know, ups and downs, and I think even knowing that they're going to do one more episode, the classic like vignette, like where they are now, to wrap it up here at the end, I appreciated it for what it was. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And right here at the end, the last thing I'll talk about is, and it's probably not on purpose, but a lot of the aging up of these characters seems awkward.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You see a lot of these characters, and like freaking Sato looked like he was like all of a sudden like an old man like 10 years later. You know what I mean? It's like what happened to him? You know what I mean? Did the sugar finally get to him? I don't get it.
Yeah, that's also just kind of a hard thing in general for anime, because portraying characters' ages accurately in anime has always been an issue with the art style, which is one of the reasons why that freaking new Chinese law in China about like characters who appear under 20
Right.
is just even more ridiculous, because freaking you can have characters walking around who are 40 and look like they're under 20, quote
Yeah.
unquote,
Yeah. I mean,
or characters who are like 15 and look like they're 80.
absolutely. You know, like there's this thing that like Jacksepticeye was doing recently, and there was like this filter or whatever, and he was like taking a picture of his face for something. He was doing something for his channel, obviously, and when he had it up on his phone, Jack is like mid 30s now. He's like 35, 36, right? Basically our age. And he the filter comes up, and it has like the information that I was bringing up, and it said male, early 20s. Okay?
Yeah.
That's 15 years. Now, again, I talked about the Tom Brady thing at the end of the reaction. If you look at Tom Brady, football player, for those of you who don't know, I know not everybody's a sports ball person like me. So if you look at Tom Brady from when he was like 21, when he first came into the league, till like now as like a broadcaster, if you showed those side by side and asked which one of those was when he was younger, you'd point out the one where he's 46, not 21. People age differently. And especially, I firmly believe that where we're at right now, people are going to age a lot differently. Look at people like, obviously, people that are wealthy and stuff like that can like take better care of themselves and stuff like that. But look at people like Jennifer Aniston. She's like in her 50s. She still looks like the same pretty much when she was like doing Friends 25 years ago when she was in her 20s. You know what I mean? The guy who plays Ant-Man, he was also in Friends 25 years ago. He looks literally the same. Literally the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There are a lot of guys that, or people, male or female, you look at them and it's just like, you haven't moved. You hit like 25 and you've been 25 for the last 50 years. I mean, look at Snoop Dogg. He looks the same. I remember when I first like became aware of Snoop Dogg when I was a kid, 30 years ago, and still looking like Snoop Dogg. You know what I mean?
Some people, it's like, there's also like the extreme opposite kind of thing of like some people start looking old really quickly, but then they just sit there, like freaking Ozzy, until like the last few years of his life. Like he looked old in his like late 20s, early 30s, and then all the way up until he died looked basically the same up until like the last couple of years where his health took a massive turn.
Right. And speaking of that really quick, I still remember that like when he had the health problems that he did, and like there were a lot of things where like people were like, doctors were telling him, oh yeah, you're probably not going to make it like another 5 years. The dude made it at another almost 30 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you're in one of those situations, just as a side thing, just keep going. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? If somebody tells you got like 5 months to live, okay, well, just keep living. You know what I mean? You might make it. There are certain kids that are have like some kind of terrible disease when they're born or whatever, and they're told they're not going to make it past 3, and then you look at them, and some of these kids are like early 20s now, and they've persevered. It's all about what's going on up here, man. Don't let what anybody tells you dictate what. Sheer force of will. Your willpower is what matters the most.
Yeah, you never really freaking know with a lot of that stuff. Like, pretty much all of doctor work and stuff like that is largely just guessing.
Yep.
It's educated guessing, but still just guessing.
And that's why they call it practicing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the more experienced the doctor, the more accurate they typically are in guessing, but it's still just guessing until you get it right.
Yep. But
freaking one random personal example. It's not even a human example, but still, one of our chickens, Amy. She is one of like our oldest chickens. We got her within like the first couple of weeks of us getting her. She managed to sneak out of the chicken yard and get into the toolbox and eat a handful of screws. And friggin' the vet said that there's like no way she's gonna live more than like a couple months with those screws in her. That was like almost 4 years ago.
Right.
Still got screws in her. They don't
Right.
come out because
Yeah.
of the way the chicken's digestion works, and the screws are too big. But she's still just going around being a chicken.
Yeah. So, either way, that's just kind of like the thing we wanted to talk about was just like the way they like age some of the characters in this. It was kind of awkward, but it's for the vignettes at the end, so who cares, right? It's not really that important. And if the series does continue it as like as a sequel series and stuff like that, I'm sure it'd be addressed or changed or whatever. So I think aging characters is always kind of difficult. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
anyway, at the end of the day, very solid series. You know, I enjoyed this series. Is it one of my top series of all time? Not personally, from like a personal like what I enjoyed standpoint. I enjoyed the series. Objectively speaking, you know, one of the biggest deals in anime of the last 10 years, you know, since the mid 20 teens into the 2020s here, and the effect that it had on like modern shonen and stuff like that, and I appreciate it. I did enjoy the series, absolutely, but it's one of those things where not like something that I personally enjoy for just various factors. It had its moments, it had its things. Yes, I enjoyed the show and stuff like that, but there are still plenty of things that I would personally put above it for my own personal thing. But from like an objective shonen standpoint, top 3 easy, no problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very good, and I do like it. But yeah, I also probably wouldn't put it in like any of my like big top 10 favorites or anything like that.
Would it be something that I'd recommend somebody just getting into anime just as time goes on? It's like as like a staple, yeah. You know, the gripes I have with Dragon Ball Z and just the Dragon Ball universe in general, I'd still recommend people watch it, obviously, to just have those like iconic moments known. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
But either way, round of applause to everybody who worked on the series, the author, all that stuff. Fantastic. You know what I mean? Bravo. Got to give them their flowers and stuff like that. So I appreciated it for what it was, even if it wasn't one of my like favorite things of all time. But you know, that's just personal preference. I can step back and look at it and go, yes, this was a very important and very good series. So that's all I got for this. This did run much longer than I wanted it to, but there was a bunch of stuff to talk about, and this was a series wrap. And then when the final like epilogue episode comes out, we'll do it, and then obviously, you know, since we've already done this, we won't have to do this again, so we'll just talk about that last episode for what it is, and that'll be it as whatever we're doing in, you know, at the end of the spring season, whenever that might come out, you know, May, June, whatever that is. So we'll have another set of shows coming up here for the winter stuff. We'll be doing Jujutsu Kaisen, Fire Force, Initial D, or not Initial D, MF Ghost will be coming back. Frieren, we'll be doing Frieren on the channel for the first time, so that'll be fun. But we're waiting on dubs. So since this was only 11 episodes, we got a couple other things to wrap up, like Gachikuta Spy Family goes to 13. So everything's kind of wonky. So there might be like some more sparse weeks when Gachikuta and Campfire Cooking wrap up next week. But you know, we'll throw in like we'll finally finish up Has Been, and then I want to do just like a year in a review thing kind of for 2025. Mostly to rip on Guild Receptionist again, because I gotta do it one more time. I gotta do it one more time. So
yeah, and while it's definitely not worth its own video, we still do need to talk about Faraway Paladin to some extent.
Yeah, and that'll be in that year in review thing, because we've been talking about since 2022. We said we'd watch the second season of Faraway Paladin when it came out. We finally did it, and man, what a mediocre evening that was. So either way, My Hero Academia, thank you for everything you've done. Bravo. So if they do a sequel series, we'll probably do it if we're still doing YouTube. But I want to keep doing YouTube as long as I'm able to get in front of the camera and do this on a weekly basis. So I'm not going anywhere as long as I can help it. So maybe we'll watch Vigilantes on our own time and do like a one-off video on that, because I really don't want to do a series for that, because we got so much other stuff going on right now, and I'd rather be slightly relevant, as to when it came out, as opposed to, oh man, we're doing it like 2 years later. You know what I mean? So especially with the fact that Slime, one of our favorite series of all time, is getting like a mega core 4th season that's going to be like 5 cores and finish up the series. That's gonna be like the new Don Machi for us. It's gonna be crazy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, plus the whole thing of like Fire Force is nearly over, and there's like all of the freaking rumors,
potential for Soul Eater Perfect, that kind of thing, which we've been looking forward to on a personal standpoint. Hunter might be coming back. That would be insane. So it's just there's so much, you guys. But as always, anybody who spends time here with us, we always appreciate you, and we're gonna keep going. So if you enjoy the content, like, subscribe, all that fun jazz, and we're gonna keep doing it. So here's to a great and interesting 2026, I'm sure. So everybody, have a good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is for you. I'm gonna have Victoria roll the stills of this final season here, because we're not gonna wait till May to do that. We'll just do this for what it was. And yeah, we'll see you next week, continuing the stuff that we're still finishing up. But Wednesday will probably be like Has Been or something, the rap episode or something like that for the next couple weeks, whatever we can slot in there. Or just Wednesday will be open until we start the new set of shows that is starting here in the winter season, while we're just waiting for the dubs to get going here. Because the end of the year is always kind of dubious with dubs and stuff like that, for holiday season and stuff like that in the West and whatnot. And it's not just the West, all over the world. So just giving people time off and whatnot. So we'll probably waiting on dubs a little bit. So this miraculously somehow got to us talking for a literal hour, but it was the end of My Hero Academia, and somehow in my dream-like unawake state, I talked about it for this long. But it warrants it. It was one of the biggest series in the last 10 years, and it deserves a very long video. And we could easily talk about this for multiple hours, but we're going to call it here. So, yeah.
Now, clearly we got to readjust our recording schedules to do full 6-hour breakdowns of each episode.
Yeah, just, no, I don't want to be murder. I don't want to do that. But either way, ladies and gentlemen, people of YouTube, beyond, however you're watching, again, we appreciate you. And in the spirit of My Hero Academia for 2026, let's go beyond plus ultra. And we'll see you next time.
Hey everyone, Victoria here. If you enjoyed the video, please consider pushing those like and subscribe buttons. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thanks again for your time, and we hope to see you again in the future.